Aerith's death in Final Fantasy VII is the most iconic plot twist in video game history, and for good reason. While the game so far has not been without its horrifying moments, it has been a joyful, whimsical journey around the globe where you saw and did all these wacky things with your friends, and then suddenly, one of them is gone. It's an absolutely gut-wrenching moment that the most carefree and peaceful member of the party is the one who bears the punishment for the sins Cloud committed in handing over the Black Materia to Sephiroth. Final Fantasy had certainly killed party members before, but it had never done it entirely out of the blue like this, making the player feel the sting of losing Aerith as much as the party did. In Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the game concludes with this legendary scene, and I was so desperate to get to the end of the game, I rushed through as fast as I could to see how or if they could recapture that moment, and to my disappointment, Rebirth awkwardly muddles this scene. Now, Final Fantasy VII's story isn't the easiest to understand, but I'd argue that all the mystical and hard to follow concepts and plot points are introduced immediately after this scene. This is where the narrative gets convoluted with things like Cloud's true identity, Sephiroth's ultimate goal, and Cloud and Tifa's journey through the lifestream. This is where Final Fantasy VII loses that simple and jolly exploration fun that made the game so incredible up to this point. While I admit I didn't understand what happened in my initial playthrough, after some explainer videos and that glorious culmination at the Northern Crater, I can firmly say that this is an epic ending to this expansive tale. But the point is that Final Fantasy VII holds back on pulling the trigger on all this high-concept storytelling until after that moment, so even the most casual player can feel the full force of despair in losing Aerith. If the game had been too narratively complex before this point, it could have made me uninvested in the characters and not feel the emotional weight of one of them dying. This is why we go to fun places along the journey, like Costa del Sol and the Gold Saucer. FF7 is trying to be a lighthearted game before it can stab us in the proverbial back. Now, this is where Rebirth and, in a sense, the entire remake trilogy screwed it up. They used even more highly complex storytelling techniques before, after, and even during this pivotal moment. There's so much going on that will fly over the head of any non-superfan that it's inconclusive at the end whether Aerith is even dead. This is the opposite of what you want a character's death to be. It should be the definitive end of their story. At the end of their life, their final moment should all be wrapped up so the ambiguity of their death doesn't torture the viewer. There's a particular character in Jujutsu Kaisen that died last season, and because of one line that seems more and more likely to be a backdoor excuse to bring them back, fans have claimed that they are still alive, when at this point of the story it would be ludicrous for that to happen. The same is true for Aerith. We genuinely don't know what this version of her Cloud is seeing. Does she live on through the lifestream, or is this an alternate version of her? Did Cloud have a complete mental breakdown and she's a coping mechanism, or is Sephiroth now in full control and showing this to Cloud to manipulate him? But that's just the aftermath. The entire sequence of Aerith's death is poorly edited to confuse the viewer in a will they won't they Schrodinger's death of Aerith, and they are trying to disorient the viewer in this critical moment, and it's just not the time to toy with us. When you think she definitively has passed on, she strolls through a portal to help us fight Sephiroth, but of course this is an alternate universe version of Aerith, which means I have to give a tedious explanation of why multiverses are destructive storytelling devices. Essentially, this removes all consequence from the story, because now you can just hop over to another universe and whoever dies is alive again. Comics love to use this because they always have to keep things at the status quo, but for more forward-facing mediums like games and movies, this removes stakes from the adventure. It's already happened in Rebirth. Zack is essentially alive again, which ultimately robs Crisis Core of its best moment. Nothing is stopping them from doing this with Jesse and Sonon or anyone else, which would cheapen all those sacrifices. I love that they're not doing a straight adaptation of the original game. It shows that they're not trying to erase or replace the 1997 game, but expand on it. However, doing so in Nomura's convoluted style is at odds with what Disc 1 was like. The world-spanning adventure, seeing all these people and places while still present in Rebirth, is now mixed up alongside all this craziness about the multiverse, and unfortunately, audiences are just burnt out on the concept, and it's too late to the boat. But then that's getting into the whole budgets and development cycles are too long discussion, and let's not discuss that, shall we? Aerith's death is a pivotal moment in video game storytelling history, and I feel as though when trying to expand upon it for this remake, they've lost what made that moment so tragic both during and after it. Let's see where Part 3 takes us, but I'm cautious to see how this plays out. If you want to see a video about Red 13 and Barrett's relationship, click the box on the left, and I'll see you in 2 days.